Xia Gongyuan and Feng Ming left easily, causing Feng Jin and the others to feel uneasy. Feng Jin cast a spell, creating a golden circle, thinking that this was the boundary between life and death. If that mysterious radiance cultivator arrived in time, there would be no chance to retreat. Everyone was surprised as he rushed forward, his face full of confidence. Suddenly, the red thread advanced. The red thread gently slipped through his hand, leaving him stunned. The red thread began to wrap around his arm, causing him to cry out in pain. Feng Jin clutched his arm in agony, looking at the person in front of him. The culprit behind Feng Jin's arm was Li Weide. He looked at Feng Jin, and they faced each other. The three people on Feng Jin's side prepared to attack simultaneously, shouting loudly and charging forward. Li Weide closed his eyes, calmly exuding a great source of power. He nimbly dodged all the attacks, leaving those people in shock. This was the arrogance of the mysterious radiance cultivator. If the pure spirit energy cultivator did not have a sacred artifact for protection, just a single brush with mysterious radiance would lead to a fate of shattered souls. The person on Feng Jin's side was terrified and tried to flee, but how could it be that easy? Li Weide pointed at him and said seriously, "Want to run?" Then he unleashed a red thread. The red thread shot straight towards the back of that person, causing him continuous pain. He was already wearing protective armor, so he quickly escaped from Li Weide. Seeing this, Li Weide said, "Humph, do you think having a piece of protective armor can protect you?" Li Weide cast a spell, creating a gigantic phantom hand. The two phantom hands of Li Weide grabbed the person from Feng Jin, leaving him in utter fear. Li Weide soared into the air amidst a swirl of black energy, radiating a source of power around him. The phantom hands, with their claws, aimed to eliminate that person, but unexpectedly, the hands were unable to do anything. He still managed to escape. At that moment, Feng Jin's ring also fell down, then flew back up. The ring flew straight into the vortex, accompanied by a stream of golden energy. Li Weide looked in that direction and thought to himself, surely this person has a powerful cultivator protecting him, which is why the primordial spirit has not been destroyed. He thought to himself, ignoring Feng Jin, and then ran after the boat that was slowly drifting away. Lu Tao saw that the lady was still standing there, and he shouted, "Madam Chen, hurry up." The boat had already gone far, but Li Weide did not give up. He charged forward, using his red thread to attack. The boat was halted by that red thread. The thread pierced through the chests of Lu Tao and Madam Chen, leaving both of them stunned. Zhang Yan landed on the boat, and before him were two invisible figures, only visible by the red threads surrounding them. He unleashed the mystical harmony shield, but immediately after, the shield shattered into pieces. In one hand, Zhang Yan held some kind of token, while in the other, he grasped a sphere that resembled a belly of curses. That sphere created a barrier, separating him from everything around. Zhang Yan was inside it, solemnly gazing at the two invisible figures. The red thread advanced, producing a swish sound as its ends touched his barrier. Zhang Yan's expression was very calm at this moment. He used the token in his hand, closed his eyes, and began to chant a spell. The boat continued to sail forward. Li Weide stood behind, watching the boat grow increasingly distant, his eyes blazing with anger as he gritted his teeth and said, "Wei Min, don't worry, even if I have to chase him to the ends of the earth, I will kill that bastard and avenge you." 16 days later, aboard the Long Na spaceship in the cabin, Zhang Yan was meditating. He slowly opened his eyes and gently said, "Is it here again?" Stepping outside to take in the scene before him, he thought to himself, 16 days have passed, and these days have been spent in evading pursuit. Zhang Yan looked towards the approaching figure and thought, it seems that the opponent will not stop until they have killed me. Li Weide reappeared, employing the same old trick, throwing out a red thread. Zhang Yan immediately summoned two swords, but his mind was racing, not understanding why. Clearly, it was past December 1st, and the sea should have opened again by now. Logically, the Brightblade sect should dispatch high-level cultivators to come down and provide assistance. At the very least, someone should have come down to check. Yet, until now, no one had come down here. Two swords fought fiercely with the red thread of Li Weide. The stream of thoughts continued in Zhang Yan's mind. In recent days, while battling this person back and forth, he had also discovered the characteristics of this bloodline. This item would actively devour anything with sentience and spiritual energy. If the thing being gnawed on during this process was flesh and blood, the bloodline would seem to extract nutrients from them. However, if it encountered a high-grade magical artifact, the bloodline itself would be completely depleted by the spiritual energy. Thinking this, Zhang Yan unleashed countless high-grade magical artifacts. He smiled faintly, confidently thinking, I may not have other things, but I have countless sacred artifact flying swords. After all, ever since I obtained the Sword of Perfection, I no longer need these anymore. Li Weida was stunned and said, this guy is too extravagant, using all the flying swords classified as low-grade spiritual energy to block, and moreover, each one follows one after another, just like scraps of meat being thrown out. After a while, he was exhausted, panting heavily. Nevertheless, Li Weida still shouted loudly to assert his dominance. Junior, I will definitely kill you. After the battle, Zhang Yan continued to ponder. With the sacred artifact spaceship in hand, there was truly no need to fear the enemy. He sat down, his hands resting on his knees, and his mind kept swirling with thoughts. He wondered, but clearly, I have accumulated enough Xia brothers, so why can't I break through the final barrier? After thinking with his eyes closed for a long time, Zhang Yan asked himself, could it be because of divine will? Then a new thought emerged in his mind, the Seven Loves Golden Heavenly Book regarding the two paths of metal and fire? These two systems inherently possessed a fierce will surging forth, representing a bold and resolute path. Yet during these days, he had been cooped up in the Long Na spaceship, constantly avoiding confrontation. It looked dangerous, but in reality, it was extremely peaceful. With a retreat path in his heart, naturally, it would not stimulate the thoughts of life and death combat in his mind. Thus, with the divine will misaligned, it was impossible to achieve the realm of unity with mysterious radiance. Not creating any waves, he found that he still could not complete this final step from beginning to end. Suddenly, Zhang Yan's eyes lit up. He realized that his purpose in this life was to overcome difficulties, to break down and rebuild. Having come this far, the only thing left was to seek a way to survive in a place of death. With that thought, he called out loudly, is Su Yilang there? The green jade orb in his hand began to glow. Su Yilang appeared, bowing his head and saying, what can I do for you, my lord? Seeing the ethereal image of Su Yilang materialize, Zhang Yan couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. Su Yilang quickly lowered himself to the ground, kneeling in cold reverence, continuously expressing his gratitude. Thanks to my lord bringing me here, I have been able to attain this day. Then, he raised one hand, rubbing his head, looking a bit apprehensive, and continued, this place is devoid of sunlight, and the underground is filled with murky and ominous energy. For a spirit like mine, it is a great tonic. Thus, during these days, I have been experiencing comfort, and my damaged primordial spirit has been gradually recovering. Zhang Yan stood with his arms crossed, and happily continued, it's just that your opportunity has come. Listen carefully, this time I need to break through to a new realm, and there must be no mistakes. You will help me keep an eye on the situation outside, and you need to observe carefully, do you understand? Su Yilang immediately cried tears of joy. He rushed over, tightly embracing Zhang Yan's arm and expressing his gratitude repeatedly, Master, why have you only now allowed me to contribute my strength? Su Yilang, I have always had no chance to achieve merit. Today, I finally have the opportunity to step into the spotlight. I will definitely work diligently and absolutely will not dare to be negligent in the slightest. Zhang Yan smiled with 3 parts helplessness and 7 parts indulgence on his lips, then said, you, this little brat, really are used to relying on others. The ship continued to move forward, passing through the dark and dangerous cave. From the train, Zhang Yan quickly jumped down to the ground below, his face serious, thinking to himself, this time, I consider it as cutting off my retreat, burning the boats behind me. Under the influence of his tense mood, it seemed as if a gloomy aura was radiating around him. He continued to remind himself, at most, in 3 to 5 days, that mysterious radiance cultivator from the Blood Soul sect will catch up. If I can't get through this step, then I will be a dead man. Su Yilang, pointing in a direction with curiosity, asked, Old man, there are many evil spirits around here, I wonder if I can touch them? Zhang Yan calmly replied, "They are originally unowned objects, use them as you wish, you can cultivate on your own, no need to ask me." After confirming this, Su Yilang's body began to grow larger, one hand reaching out to grasp the evil spirit in front of him. Zhang Yan looked on with some confusion, not understanding how he was able to do this, but he did not stop him. Su Yiling tightly grasped two demon essences in his hand, and began to articulate clearly. Initially, the demon essence was formless and immaterial, originally born from the star of the netherworld. For an ordinary cultivator, it is something to avoid at all costs, but for beings like us with spiritual bodies, it is a great tonic. In the demonic sect, there is also a cultivation method that involves severing the flesh to cultivate the spirit, but that method is extremely dangerous. However, I am a cultivator of open meridian, and the primordial spirit is not something a mere mortal can compare to. He displayed an emotionless expression and continued, regardless of anything else, cultivating in the demonic abyss is a privilege reserved for the disciples of the demon sect's master. However, this place is merely a small demonic abyss, not comparable to a true demon eye, yet it has already reached the level of a typical cave abode. The demon leader here is truly one of a kind. At the same time, Su Yiling placed the demon essence in his mouth, causing it to struggle incessantly. Zhang Yan, at this moment, remained silent and contemplative. He recalled Han Chi's earlier words, if he sought the demonic sect, there might still be a glimmer of hope for enlightenment. Then, he pondered silently, the demonic sect, like a drop of water condensing and falling from the stalactites above the cave. Zhang Yan focused his mind on cultivation, as a faint golden energy continuously emanated from his body. Sui Nong, with his mouth biting into the body of the demon, called out in warning, "Master, he's coming." After waiting for a response that never came, he hurriedly waved his hands, repeatedly reminding, "Master, Master, he's here, he's here." At that moment, Zhang Yan was deeply concentrated. He sat there, telling himself, right now, the mysterious radiance occupies my mind, like a stagnant pool of water. I must stir this mysterious radiance little by little, awakening the spiritual essence within it. At this point, Zhang Yan encouraged himself, these first steps are the hardest, it's not about standing still but rather about not having reached the right level. It's like adding firewood to boil water, melting iron, patience is essential. In the large pit before him, Su Yilang was hiding, one hand pointing forward, his face extremely panicked, and then he shouted a warning, "Master, he's coming, he's right in front of us." At that moment, Li Weide quickly appeared, his body hovering in the air, unable to suppress his doubts. This place was clearly a lifeless land, and this cunning man had always managed to escape effortlessly after several previous encounters. Why was he suddenly digging his own grave? Was he up to some trick? Zhang Yan below sensed the commotion and thought to himself, if the enemy is strong and at the door, it's the most critical moment. Can we overcome this? It all depends on this one time. He brought his palms together, and fierce energy sources appeared around him, blazing like a fire. Then, powerful bolts of electricity formed a barrier around him. The two sources of energy merged together, creating a complete unified entity, accompanied by an incredible amount of power. However, Li Weide's weak abilities could not withstand it all, his power was quickly nullified. Zhang Yan gradually emerged from within that powerful energy, looking ahead with immense confidence. Seeing this scene, Li Weide couldn't help but be taken aback, exclaiming, "Mysterious radiance, is it?" He thought to himself, frustrated, clearly, this junior is just a pure spirit energy cultivator, how could he have transformed in the blink of an eye into a cultivator at the same level as me, with the same cultivation? Zhang Yan gently raised his hand, unleashing an astonishingly intense surge of energy, and spoke clearly, "The practitioner of the Blood Soul sect has been chasing me for many days, so I have no choice but to use you to test the might of my mysterious radiance a bit, thus seizing this opportunity to express the turmoil in my heart." After that, the powerful energy surged forward. Li Weide could only conjure a hand to defend himself, but his abilities were far inferior, and he quickly found himself exhausted, causing his body to be pushed back. Li Weide, unwilling to accept this, questioned, "Impossible, he has just mastered the mysterious radiance, how can he be so formidable?" Filled with rage, he exclaimed, "Junior, are you really so audacious?" Simultaneously, a silver ring shot out from the palm of his hand, enlarging as it spun, generating an immense force. Suddenly, a small energy sphere emerged from Zhang Yan's body, flying forward. It was as if he had just realized a profound truth, and he thought to himself, I've heard that the mysterious radiance, perfected in the Grand Golden Book, can match the power of a sacred artifact flying sword. I wonder if that's true. A somewhat sinister smile appeared on his lips. He unleashed a fierce flame towards Li Weide, who was fleeing. In an instant, Zhang Yan appeared right before him. He extended his index finger, preparing to strike. Li Weide could only conjure a weak barrier to shield his body. The power of Zhang Yan was immense, dense around him. Li Weide's body was filled with wounds, and he began to curse, "You little brat, how dare you toy with me? A man can die, but he will not endure humiliation." Next, Li Weide, without any hesitation, plunged headfirst into danger. Zhang Yan, seeing this, was extremely pleased and immediately indulged him, saying, "If you are so eager to seek death, then I shall grant your wish." A strike from Zhang Yan came down in front, instantly sweeping away everything that remained. Zhang Yan stood there emotionlessly, watching, while secretly thinking, the people of the Blood Soul Sect, the people of the Bright Blade Sect, Lu Tao, Fangjin, and also Madame Chen, I only know that they no longer know that guy. All of them have turned to dust. Witnessing all that had happened, he silently told himself, the great way of eternal life is truly heartless, the path of cultivation is still long, and the road to the great Tao before me is just the beginning. At this point, the great Tao contest at CI Demonic Abyss came to an end. Please look forward to the next chapter. The punishment of Sanbai once again ignited the calamity of war. The gem in Zhang Yan's hand emitted a mysterious blue power. Before long, the energy within the gem was depleted, and it shattered into pieces. He was sitting in meditation, with a massive pillar of light behind him, surrounded by swirling spiritual energy gradually approaching, and another gem appeared in his hand. This time, Zhang Yan absorbed the power within it through his third eye. Yeah. He stood up, exhaling a breath and softly said, "This is one of the cultivation methods that Brother Xia controls within the Sword of Perfection, as recorded in the primordial sword scripture of the Radiant Separation Technique. This method, when in conflict, can cause the sword light to decompose and injure others. 2 becomes 3, 3 becomes 1,000, 1,000 becomes 10,000. Until it returns to its original essence, each tiny particle of spiritual essence can be regarded as a sword of perfection. However, to master its application, one must slowly refine the sword of perfection together with Brother Xia first, integrating it into the body along with the mysterious radiance. At present, attempting to use it again would be somewhat forced." At this moment, he clasped his hands behind him, his gaze following the distant mountaintop. Today was the 12th of December. In 3 days, Zhang Yan could borrow the Scroll of the River's Might to return to the Dragon Abyss Great Estate. However, up to this point, he still did not understand why there had been no response from the Bright Blade sect. Zhang Yan pondered inwardly, not to mention the other fellow disciples trapped here, he said, as a true disciple, the sect would definitely not abandon me once they learn of my situation. Moreover, once Shu's senior disciple finds out, even if he cannot come himself, he will certainly invite other experts to rescue me. The greatest possibility he feared was that Xiezong Yuan and the others had encountered trouble along the way and could not bring the news back to the mountain gate. He had no choice but to compromise in his mind. Well, it's rare to be in a place with such abundant spiritual energy, extremely suitable for cultivation. After all, I have to stay for a few days. It would be better to increase my strength a bit before deciding what to do next. As for the members of the Blood Soul Sect, aside from the alchemist, the others are currently no match for me. If I encounter them, I'll kill one if I find one, and take down a pair if I find 2. From the palm of his hand, a powerful surge of spiritual power began to erupt into the sky. Zhang Yan, filled with melancholy, thought, moreover, there are still troubles that need to be resolved. The golden tome of Tayat that I am cultivating has an unclear origin. As soon as I unleash the mysterious radiance, anyone with discerning eyes will be able to recognize it. This is an extremely profound cultivation method, and it will surely raise suspicions. If I want to hide it, I must refine the water-based mysterious radiance from the mystic Lan Cloud secret tome. Suddenly, a voice came from him, "Master, Master." He slowly lifted the hem of his robe to retrieve something and asked, "What is it?" Suinan, tiny and just freed from a cramped space, clasped his hands and pleaded, "Master, I want to stay here." Zhang Yan exclaimed in surprise, showing doubt, "Why?" He quickly replied, "Master, now that I have lost my body, returning to the sect wouldn't help you, on the contrary, it would only cause trouble." After thinking it over, Zhang Yan felt somewhat conflicted. Su Yiling continued, speaking earnestly, "It might be better to stay here and follow the path of the demon lord. Who knows, in the future, you might even become a support for the old master." Zhang Yan was currently staring intently at him. One must understand that in the demonic abyss, it takes 100 years for a mere spirit to transform into an illusory demon, another 100 to become an action demon, and yet another 100 to become a true demon. So, after 3 years, a demon's intelligence might awaken, allowing them to resemble living beings, such legends are told. Beyond the true demon, there are several more levels, and it is even possible to cultivate to the legendary heavenly demon, possessing powers that are fundamentally no weaker than those of the great cultivators. Seeing Zhang Yan stroking his chin in contemplation, Su Yiling urged, "Old master, after spending just a day in the demonic abyss, I can now separate a true soul to stay with you, attending to your needs. This soul is originally part of me. Whenever there is a need, Zhao the Humble can emerge at any time, indistinguishable from my main self." Zhang Yan's mind was filled with calculations. Su Yiling lacked a physical body. Without that true soul, he would certainly lose over half of his awareness, becoming as dull as an ordinary demon and losing more than half of the advantages compared to other demons. The outcome could easily be imagined. By saying this, he was expressing his loyalty. However, allowing Su Yiling to remain here would conversely be a hidden agenda. In the future, there would come a time when he would be needed. Thinking that, he immediately opened his mouth to respond, "All right, I agree with you. Before I leave, I will allow you to stay here." Su Yiling quickly bowed his head in gratitude, thanking the master for his consent. Afterwards, Zhang Yan took him along and soared into the air, simultaneously creating a vortex akin to a protective barrier. "For the next few days, I want to meditate and cultivate. You will stay by my side to guard me, and if there is any disturbance, immediately inform me." He responded clearly, "Yes, master." At this moment, Zhang Yan's heart was filled with worries. After Han Qi, now there was Su Yiling. The demonic way of the Bright Blade sect was growing increasingly numerous. It was not only me who was using all my resources to seek the path of eternal life. As soon as this thought finished, Zhang Yan took out the gem containing the cultivation method to practice. Spiritual energy surged and swirled around his body. Not long later, Zhang Yan opened his eyes, once again falling into deep contemplation. The progress he had made in the past few days was swift, sufficient to conceal his cultivation. If he could spend a few more days to refine and obscure his essence further, that would be even better. Suddenly, the heavens and earth shook violently. He was startled, wondering, has it arrived already? Zhang Yan quickly stood up, his eyes fixated on the waves of white mist rolling over the jagged cliffs. They gradually gathered together, forming an extraordinarily large column of water. It was at that moment, around noon on the 15th day, that the sea eye opened. Seeing this, Zhang Yan spread his arms to welcome the pure water droplets approaching his body, unable to help but marvel quietly. Although this was not the first time he had witnessed such a scene, each time he saw it, he felt the marvel of creation. Therefore, it can be inferred that there are many rare and extraordinary sights in the world. Among the 9 continents of the world, the Eastern Flower Continent occupies only a small corner. If in the future, one's cultivation becomes profound, it would allow for wandering across the world, seeking to experience the Tao and broaden one's knowledge. Suddenly, the column of water began to tremble violently, bursting apart without warning. This undoubtedly made Zhang Yan more vigilant. From within the waves, a figure clad in white emerged, resembling an immortal. It was none other than Qi Yun Tian. As soon as he appeared, he gently asked, "You must be Zhang Yan? Zhang Junior disciple?" Zhang Yan quickly clasped his hands in greeting, saying, "Yes, I am. May I ask how to address senior disciple?" Qi Yun Tian replied calmly, "I am Qi Yun Tian." As soon as his words ended, Zhang Yan immediately fell into deep thought. Shi Yun Tian stood at the top of the 10 major disciples of the Bright Blade sect. He observed the person who was slowly descending to the ground, his mind bombarded with countless thoughts. This person was none other than the first disciple of Meng True Immortal, and Meng True Immortal was the sect leader's greatest disciple. In other words, Shi Yun Tian had the potential to be the future sect leader of the Bright Blade sect, which shows just how significant this person's identity was. Originally, senior disciple Ning Rongxian intended for me to become his disciple, but I never expected that the master-disciple lineage would send this person to escort me outside. At that moment, Shi Yun Tian spoke up. According to the reports from the 2 junior disciples, there were 7 others accompanying Zhang junior disciple. Do you know where we currently are? Zhang Yan shook his head and clasped his hands in report. On that day, to send off CS senior disciple and the others, I lost several senior brothers. After that, I engaged in battle with the disciples of Blood Soul sect. As of now, I am the only junior disciple left. Upon hearing this, Shi Yun Tian asked, have the disciples of Blood Soul sect appeared at all in the past few days? He calmly replied, at first, we could still see them, but for the past few days, there has been no sign of them. They must be wary of our Bright Blade sect sending people here, and they don't dare to stay long. The pressure from Shi Yun Tian erupted, his anger soaring as he said, the Blood Soul sect dares to kill the disciples of the Bright Blade sect without reason. I will definitely report this to the sect leader when I return, to seek justice for you junior disciples. At that moment, Zhang Yan spoke up, filled with doubt, today, the senior disciples must have come here to rescue us. However, Xie Feng and the 2 senior brothers left the demonic abyss 15 months ago, the sect must have known about this long ago. Could it be that something unexpected happened on the way, causing such a long delay? Shi Yun Tian shook his head in dismay and replied quietly, it is also due to the misfortune of those junior disciples. Pang True Immortal, the renowned archer, was at a critical point in his cultivation and, to avoid any disturbances, ordered that the island be sealed off, prohibiting anyone from entering or leaving. Therefore, even though Xie junior disciple and Feng junior disciple had exited the demonic abyss, they were unable to leave. It was only a few days ago that Pang True Immortal lifted the ban, and the sect finally learned of the news. Zhang Yan, upon receiving the explanation, stroked his chin and understood, so that was it. He couldn't help but feel a sense of lamentation within. Indeed, when he first arrived on the island, Pang True Immortal had a forewarning about a breakthrough in his realm, but it turned out to be a coincidence, truly unfortunate. Shi Yun Tian recalled something and said, that day, after I heard about this matter, I initially thought that after so many days of delay, it would be too late. However, junior disciple Ning told me that perhaps others would find it hard to escape a calamity. As for you, junior disciple Zhang, you would naturally be safe and sound, who knows, you might even escape on your own without our assistance. I asked him why he thought that way, but he only smiled and did not respond. I then wagered with him. Looking back now, it truly seemed to be the case. Zhang Yan then seriously expressed, she's senior disciple, it seems like you might be falling into Ning's senior disciple's trap. Others may not know about my life and death, but Ning's senior disciple definitely does. He appeared puzzled and asked, why is that? Zhang Yan replied boldly, in the past, Ning's senior disciple gifted me a wish-fulfillment divine vessel for protection. If I were to die, the divine vessel would surely be taken by someone else to be refined. At that time, Ning's senior disciple would definitely sense it, which is why he dares to say such things. Shi Yun Tian put his hands on his hips and laughed, saying, what a clever junior disciple Ning, you've made me miscalculate completely. Zhang Yan set this matter aside, feeling grateful as he bowed to him and said, in any case, I must thank the senior disciple for your help. It seems that today, I can return to the sect. Shi Yun Tian surely agreed, and then said to the junior disciple, close your eyes. Following his gesture, a massive blue spiritual power slowly approached Zhang Yan's body. After a while, Shi Yun Tian called out, junior disciple, can you open your eyes now? Zhang Yan slowly opened his eyes, and to his surprise, he saw the fairyland of Penglai before him. Where is this? Zhang Yan thought in astonishment. In such a short time, he had already left the merfolk. It was said that once one's cultivation reached the stage of transformation, a magical power would manifest around the body, allowing the creation of a passage. He wondered what cultivation method Shi Yun Tian had just used. Shi Yun Tian seemed to see through his confusion and replied, "Junior disciple, this technique is called the minor Na-Di shifting technique, which is a small branch of divine power developed from the 5 elements concealment technique." He laughed and said, "In the Bright Blade sect, apart from various types of secret methods, there are also superior cultivation methods such as the 5 arts and 3 classics, and the 12 divine powers. After you have made some contributions, you will also be able to choose a secret manual from the Spirit Foundation Institute to cultivate." Shi Yun Tian said seriously, "I know that although the aptitude of the junior disciple is not considered extremely high, your temperament is very good. If you can maintain your original determination and continue on, there is hope for the great Tao. However, the path of cultivating the way requires not only advanced cultivation methods but also fellow practitioners to guide you along the way. You cannot walk this path alone. You need to remember this well." Zhang Yan respectfully replied, "I will remember the teachings of the senior disciple." He thought to himself that before entering the demonic abyss, he had not heard any news of Shi Yun Tian emerging from seclusion, so he must have just come out and rushed to this place. He pondered lightly that most of the top 10 disciples in the sect had their own factions, and this was clearly an attempt to draw him into his camp. If Shi Yun Tian were to be groomed as a future sect leader, then... Zhang Yan looked up at Shi Yun Tian and silently thought, "The Winged Master sect is very likely to want to cultivate me as a potential assistant to the sect leader, that is, the future Elder Dong Tian." Shi Yun Tian said, "Now that you, junior disciple, have entered the mysterious radiance realm, if you can achieve some significant merits in the Sanbai battle, I can also help you behind the scenes. However, currently, there are also outstanding disciples under the other senior brothers, and they are your competitors. In the future, remember not to fall too far behind them." With that, he turned and left. Zhang Yan respectfully replied, "Yes." Then he followed Shi Yun Tian down. As they walked, Shi Yun Tian recounted, "Last month, Pang True Immortal achieved great merit, and from now on, our sect has another true immortal." Suddenly, he fell silent for a moment and then continued, "Before I arrived here, someone from the Pang clan came to congratulate us, and the true immortal did not close the door to visitors. It seems that indeed, being from the same lineage, they have never forgotten their kinship." Zhang Yan silently observed Shi Yun Tian's expression and thought to himself. It was said that Pang True Immortal originally belonged to the Pang clan of the clan faction, but later had conflicts with his family, which led to him being expelled from home. Afterward, he received care from the sect leader, which allowed him to cultivate in the Hidden Name Palace. However, this time, after successfully breaking through the barrier and becoming a true immortal of the Cave Heaven, when the Pang clan sent someone to congratulate her, she did not refuse, and the underlying meaning of this deserves careful consideration. Shi Yun Tian, being the direct descendant of the sect leader, must be somewhat displeased. He secretly smiled. The situation within the sect had become increasingly complex, and the opposing faction was growing stronger. The master-disciple side needed more assistance, and he also had more room for survival. This was indeed a great opportunity for him. Suddenly, a group of people approached to greet him, and before Zhang Yan could say anything, he heard the greeting, "Shi Senior Disciple, greetings." Shi Yun Tian spoke as he saw off Zhang Yan and Zhang Junior Disciple, "You go ahead. I will come to find you another day." Zhang Yan replied affirmatively. After Zhang Yan left, Shi Yun Tian then greeted the other person, "Thank you for your trouble." As Zhang Yan walked past, a man disdainfully spoke up, "You are the disciple that Shi's senior disciple rescued from the demonic abyss. I see the mysterious radiance on you is so faint and weak, and yet it was still worth Shi's senior disciple lowering himself to help you." He continued to ridicule, "I wonder where all the talented men and beautiful women in the sect have gone." Zhang Yan calmly stepped outside the gate, reflecting on how desolate and quiet this island was when he first arrived. Aside from the 10 disciples, there was no one else around. He looked at the people hurrying inside and couldn't help but feel contempt. Now that Pang True Immortal had just become a true immortal in the Dongtian, everyone was rushing to seek him out, afraid they would miss the chance to flatter him. Zhang Yan spoke softly, "Life is like a dream. Since I have dedicated myself to the path, what others do has nothing to do with me." He continued, "And when 100 years have passed, looking back at the present will only reveal it as a joke. With that, Zhang Yan turned and left. He quickly flew to Spirit Crest Island and calmly entered. La Ping respectfully greeted him. "Congratulations, sir, on entering the mysterious Radiance realm." The servants here were delighted for their master. Zhang Yan responded with a smile, "You are too courteous, fellow cultivator." He then asked, "I have been away for 2 months, has everything in the mansion been well?" La Ping replied, "Reporting to my lord, I have managed everything in the mansion properly on your behalf. The servants have never gone hungry or cold, and we have opened 2 additional pavilions in scenic locations on the island. When will my lord have the leisure to explore a bit?" Zhang Yan slowly walked into the room and said, "I have always been at ease regarding you." She suddenly picked up a letter and said, "There is only one thing. 10 days ago, the Siaklan sent someone to deliver a letter along with a parcel. Aside from that, there is nothing else." Zhang Yan reached out to take it. "Why must Xia's senior disciple go to such lengths?" La Ping replied, "Because Xie Zongyuan could not convey the news that you are in danger in the demonic abyss in time." She pointed to the item on the table and added, "Although it cannot be blamed on him, he must feel a sense of shame in his heart, feeling embarrassed when meeting the elder, so he sent a letter of apology along with a gift to compensate for his guilt. The item he gifted you is already on the table, I haven't peeked at it." Zhang Yan put away the letter and chuckled, "You've seen the letter, but there's still one gift left, right?" La Ping responded, "It's fine to have seen it, it's just a few items that Xia's senior disciple gave me." He took out 3 sacred artifacts and said, "Speaking of this, I managed to acquire several sacred artifacts during my cultivation in the demonic abyss this time. I can't possibly use all of them by myself, so it's just right to share them with you." Zhang Yan displayed the 3 sacred artifacts and said, "Come and take a look at these sacred artifacts, feel free to take them if you like." La Ping happily took the sacred artifacts and exclaimed, "Is the old man suddenly wealthy? Did you happen to meet some powerful cultivator this time? And there's even a high-grade spiritual energy item among them?" He mentioned that the other 2 were similar, but this particular item was special because he had obtained it specifically to gift to a fellow cultivator. In the future, when we are outside, having a few types of magical artifacts on hand can help us when facing enemies. La Ping suddenly asked, "Earlier, you mentioned wanting to go out with servant, could it be that you plan to eliminate Sanbai?" Zhang Yan was taken aback. He hurried to comfort, "Fellow cultivator, I know that it is indeed difficult for you to lay your hands on your former kin. You need not participate in this battle, but I would still like to ask you to redraw the familiar paths in Sanbai to facilitate my actions." La Ping said, "Although the servant is well acquainted with the routes of the Jade Blood Discourse, there are some secret areas of the Water Retreat Estate that are not fully known." She smiled and said, "However, the servant knows of a fellow cultivator who can certainly lend a hand to the esteemed one." Zhang Yan asked in surprise, "Who might that be?" La Ping beamed and replied, "Could it be that the esteemed one has forgotten? That fellow cultivator is still waiting below, hoping for you to come and take them on as a servant. Its former residence lies beneath Sanbai, while it cannot be said to be as familiar as the palm of one's hand, it is still recognized." Zhang Yan nodded in realization. It turned out that La fellow cultivator was referring to the golden dragon down by the river going out to cultivate for a while, something he had indeed forgotten about. He asked La fellow cultivator, "How did you know I was familiar with the way to Sanbai?" La Ping replied, "For the past 2 months, I have been remembering the old master's instructions, not loosening the restrictions, nor going outside. Out of boredom, I occasionally went to find Gao fellow cultivator to chat, and since we frequently interacted, we ended up discussing a lot of things." Zhang Yan praised, "Good, this matter cannot be delayed, I will go and collect him now." Suddenly, something made him pause. Zhang Yan quickly flew up to the place where the golden dragon was, where Fan Changchang and Qi Yun Tian were present. He asked Fan Junior disciple, "Have you always had a keen eye? Do you think the golden dragon is an ancient aberrant species?" Fan Changqing replied, 10,000 years ago, it was said that this type of aberrant species was everywhere in our sect, but now it is hard to find even one." He laughed and said, "This thing travels with the clouds and the wind, rides the waves and parts the waters. It can reach the Phoenix vast sea of the north and swim in the southern abyss of Fire Cave. If used as a mount, it would be unparalleled for leisurely travels everywhere." Zhang Junior disciple is indeed fortunate to have obtained such a creature. Zhang Yan politely replied, "It's just a golden dragon. If the two senior brothers like it, feel free to take it." Fan Changqing said, "Zhang Junior disciple, don't tease me. Just now, this golden dragon has already recognized you as its master. How could you possibly give it to me?" He continued, "I heard that Zhang Junior disciple is a direct disciple of Director Zhu. It would be more practical to take out a few pills instead." Zhang Yan gently asked, "May I know how to address you, senior brother?" He replied, "I am Fan Changqing, a disciple under Master Chang, and I am a fellow disciple of Qi senior disciple." Zhang Yan respectfully suggested, "So it is Fan's senior disciple. Since the two senior brothers are here, why not come to my cave abode for a while? It would allow me to fulfill my duty as a host." Qi Yuntian nodded in agreement, "That sounds just right." At the foot of the mountain, Qi Yuntian clasped his hands together and said, "This visit is to inform you, junior disciple, that you have returned from the demonic abyss and have successfully cultivated the hero Xia. Naturally, the sect will assign you to Sanbai to establish your merit. However, you have not yet been in the sect for a year, and with a lack of assistance from fellow disciples, it will be quite challenging." La Ping brought out a plate of fruit and gently added, "I have specifically called for Fan Junior disciple to come. You two can take care of each other." Zhang Yan observed for a moment and contemplated. This person was overflowing with true essence and appeared to emanate a significant killing intent, clearly a cultivator far beyond the path of the wicked. He clasped his hands together, realizing that what was referred to as mutual care essentially meant the other would take care of him. It seemed that Tian Tian was concerned that his prideful nature might lead him to feel ungrateful, which is why he spoke so tactfully. Fan Changqing, seated on a chair, also performed the gesture of clasping his hands. Zhang Yan took a cup of wine from the table, however, he certainly would not be so impatient as to refuse such goodwill. He stood up, bowed his head, and said, "I hope to receive more guidance from senior disciple in the future." Changqing reached for the cup of wine nearby but hesitated to accept it. Zhang Yan noticed this as well. Senior disciple Qi had deliberately come to the demonic abyss to escort this Zhang Junior disciple out and had now made the effort to personally come to his residence, clearly placing significant importance on this junior disciple. He took the glass of wine and drank it all in one go. It was said that this junior disciple Zhang cultivated the mystic Lan Cloud secret tome under senior master Sun and was even a direct disciple, clearly held in high regard by both his master and senior master Sun. In the future, as his cultivation advanced, his status would surpass mine. I must not act arrogantly, instead, I should establish a good relationship with him early on. Changqing spoke softly, "Junior disciple, in this battle, you cannot afford to show mercy or hold back. Whatever means you have, you must use them all. There's no need to hesitate over earning credit. I know you've just returned from the demonic abyss, so I'll give you some time to take care of trivial matters. In 10 days, come find me in Wangfeng City." He set the glass down, producing a sharp clinking sound. Zhang Yan replied, "I will accompany you to subjugate the three whites." A while later, Changchang and Yun Tian bid their farewells and left. Zhang Yan silently watched them until they disappeared from sight. He then walked to the waterfall and invited a fellow cultivator to meet him. At that moment, the surface of the lake rippled with undulating waves. Ngao Tong emerged, staring intently at Zhang Yan. He asked, "Surely, you know why I've come here today?" He said, "Did you not just declare in front of Fan's senior disciple that you would take me as your master? Are you really considering changing your mind?" La Ping gently asked, "Do not think that the old man necessarily wants you to be his servant, he is merely intrigued by you as an ancient exotic being, drawn to novelty. You can see how quickly the old man's cultivation is progressing. In the future, as his cultivation rises, his horizons will expand as well. Do you think he will still pay attention to you? It would be better for you to follow the old man, you might even gain many benefits." She moved closer, reached out to catch a petal, and held it up in front of Ngao Tong, saying, "Look, this is the high-quality spiritual energy that the old man has just granted. I also come from the demon race, and I know that we have always been impoverished. Aside from our own bodies, how much wealth can we really possess? Upon hearing this, Ngao Tong also showed some interest. La Ping was slightly annoyed and said, "Do you really think you can still escape? You failed to transform, and others took you away. At most, they will strip you of your skin and tendons and skin you alive, which will be of no use." She was so angry that she clenched the fabric tightly and continued, "Only my master still wants to keep you. If it were me, I would have swallowed you whole by now, cleansing my bloodline and enhancing my cultivation." "Isn't that better?" Ngao Tong sighed helplessly. All right, I understand." Ngao Tong was willing to accept the master. After saying that, it spat out a glowing orb like a will-o'-the-wisp towards Zhang Yan, who gently caught it. "If fellow cultivator Ngao has decided to regard this place as your home, then there's no need for formality." He reached out to touch the dragon seal and said, "If you feel troubled, you can take a trip to the dragon's grand abode." Upon hearing this, Ngao Tong had a slight reaction and then dove back into the water. At this moment, Zhang Yan noticed the bag beside him. He picked it up and thought, "Senior disciple Xia is truly thoughtful. Knowing that I have a golden dragon but cannot laugh, he provided this item to help control and keep it, which can also be considered a low-grade spiritual energy." He placed the item down and fell into deep thought. The memory of drinking and chatting under the moon with Lu and Xie, his two senior brothers, felt as vivid as if it had just happened. Zhang Yan turned his face away, but in the blink of an eye, Lu's senior disciple had met a tragic end, even his primordial spirit unable to escape. He stepped out to the balcony to ponder. In our mystic sect, we value the camaraderie of cultivation together, ultimately asking for nothing in return, yet a single failure leaves no opportunity for redemption. If a cultivator's primordial spirit could escape, they might still have a chance to return as a person. He reached into his pocket. If he had the guidance of a trusted fellow disciple, there might still be a chance to tread the path of immortality. Yet Lu's senior disciple's soul had been shattered, leaving no trace in the heavens and earth. He took out a string attached to a pendant, which was engraved with the name Lu Tao. Zhang Yan gazed at the pendant and thought to himself, "It has been 3 days since Lu Tao's senior disciple asked me to leave demonic abyss, and in 10 days, I must head to Sanbai." An idea struck him. Why not deliver this pendant first and quickly conclude this matter? Having made up his mind, Zhang Yan flew toward Apricot Immortal Peach. He quietly observed the scenery around him gradually passing by, and after a while, he had arrived at his destination. He landed right in the middle of the courtyard, startling the young man who was there, but he quickly bowed respectfully, unsure of what this senior brother had come for. Zhang Yan cheerfully introduced himself. "I am Zhang Yan from Spirit Crest Island, Lu Tao's senior disciple who once practiced here." Upon hearing this, the young man exclaimed in surprise, "So you are Brother Zhang?" However, his expression gradually fell, and his voice became softer, lamenting that 2 months ago, Lu's senior disciple had gone to the demonic abyss, and it was feared that he had perished. It seemed that the senior disciple's trip had been in vain. Zhang Yan asked, "I have come here on his behalf to find a junior of his. I wonder if he is here." The young man replied, "The junior of Lu's senior disciple. I heard that Lu's senior disciple has died, so he has returned to his hometown." He spoke while avoiding Zhang Yan's gaze. He noticed that this person kept talking and avoiding him, which made him a bit curious, but he didn't ask. Zhang Yan then flew back up into the sky, while the guy from earlier was so surprised that he broke out in a sweat, not expecting that Lu's senior disciple had such abilities, being able to associate with the mysterious Radiance disciple. The junior disciples had actually made a mistake in this matter. At this moment, Zhang Yan was flying high and thinking, the junior of Lu Tao's senior disciple was someone who had been expelled only after learning of Lu's senior disciple's death, so he certainly hadn't left the Dragon Abyss Great Estate in a short time. Suddenly, he noticed a boat anchored on the sea. He strained to look inside the boat and saw the figure of Lu Yanyi, who was holding a rag to clean the floor. Zhang Yan landed right in front of her and gently asked, "Are you Lu Yanyi?" She immediately stood up, clasped her hands in respect, and replied, "Yes, esteemed immortal, it is I." Zhang Yan held out a jade pendant in front of her and asked, "Do you recognize this?" She then recognized it and said, "This is the 7-heart dragon of my uncle." The hand holding the rag suddenly dropped down. She softly said, before leaving, my uncle reminded me that if someone brings this jade pendant, I must obey that person in everything. Zhang Yan pointed at her and asked, who ordered you to do these laborious tasks here? He sternly said, you don't need to worry about what she is doing here, just speak freely. The worker there immediately bowed down to confess, I didn't know she was a member of the Immortal family, I deserve to die. Yenny stepped in to stop him, saying, this has nothing to do with my uncle, the shipmaster. My uncle graciously agreed to take me thousands of miles home without charging fare, so I willingly do these tasks to help. Zhang Yan said, I'm not making things difficult for you, this is just compensation for your work. The shipmaster raised his face, realizing that Zhang Yan had left without him noticing. He quickly expressed his gratitude, thank you, Immortal. 2 beams of light appeared in the sky. They belonged to Zhang Yan and Yan Yi. He flew while looking at her, captivated by her beauty. The eyes of this young girl shone like stars in the sky. The skin of this girl is as white and smooth as jade, and on top of that, there is a colorful cloud revealing her extraordinary qualities. Even Qin Nan is far inferior. No wonder Lu Tao, the senior disciple, said that the Taoists on Apricot Immortal Peach do not dare to take her as a disciple. Perhaps she is the reincarnation of some powerful cultivator, and they fear that if they accept her as a disciple, they won't be able to bear the consequences. The 2 of them gradually flew towards an island. Zhang Yan sat on a rock next to Yan Yi. He secretly glanced at her, his heart troubled. Logically speaking, a powerful cultivator like this would usually have fellow disciples or followers. If not, at least there would be some living friends to guide her early on. Why has no one come even now? Female cultivators are different from male ones, if she waits another year or 2, she will miss the prime age for cultivation. Zhang Yan turned to her and gently asked, Yenny, I want to ask you, living peacefully on Apricot Immortal Peach, why do you want to leave? She stood up, clasped her hands, and replied, Dear Immortal, although my Lu clan has fallen, my uncle has accumulated some resources over the years. I noticed that after a few uncles heard rumors about the disappearance of their elder, they looked at me with disapproving eyes. I am young and weak, unable to protect those belongings. I fear that one day, I might not even be here myself, so it would be better to quickly let go of these things and leave. Zhang Yan also had to commend a sensible girl like her. You are still young, yet you understand that innocent people are not at fault, while those with hidden motives are. No wonder, given this situation, you can take a bit of loose change with you, enough for your journey home. Why bother doing menial tasks on the boat? Upon hearing this, she was quite delighted. I am young, and the road back home is far. I feared that someone might have ill intentions, so I asked the captain uncle to let me do some chores. Those who do not know better would think I am a relative of the captain, and they would not bully me. Zhang Yan quietly assessed her. She was indeed a clever little girl. With such talent and intelligence, if he took her as a disciple, she would surely be of great help in the future. He gently asked her, Would you accept me? I would like to take you as my registered disciple. What do you think? Yenny sincerely replied, Respected Immortal, the other immortals have all said that I am bound by karma, and they do not dare to accept me. Zhang Yan burst into laughter, saying, If others do not dare to accept you, does that mean I, Zhang Yan, have any reason to refrain? You only need to say whether you agree or not. Yenny bowed her head and responded, Master, please allow disciple Yenny to pay you 3 bows. On the way back, Zhang Yan saw Zhu Chongchu searching for something in the study, murmuring, It's been 2 months since we last met, and you've already become a mysterious radiance cultivator. He turned to look at Zhang Yan, curiously asking, Oh, who is this young lady? Zhang Yan gently pushed Yenny forward, softly encouraging, Now, go and bow to your senior uncle. Yenny obediently stepped forward, bowing respectfully. Disciple Lu Yenny pays her respects to senior uncle. Zhu Chongchu smiled warmly at her, saying, So you're the disciple that junior disciple Zhang just accepted. No need for such formalities, please stand up. He looked at Zhang Yan and continued with a smile, I see you did not shy away from calling me senior disciple in front of this little one, which must mean you are planning to cultivate her just like your direct disciples. Zhang Yan said, In a few days, my junior disciple will have to go to pacify Sanbai, so I'm afraid there won't be time to teach you. There is too much killing intent on Ling Head Island, which is not suitable for your cultivation. Therefore, I can only leave you in the care of senior disciple, where you can also receive guidance from him regularly. Chongju raised his hand to his chin, pondering for a moment, then said, "That's no problem. Come, you can follow him." He pointed to his junior disciple. Yenny obediently bowed her head and replied, "Thank you, Master Uncle." She then went outside with that person onto the balcony. Chongju watched the two children leave, then turned to Zhang Yan and asked, "Your junior disciple has found a good apprentice. This girl has an extremely high aptitude. In my hundreds of years of cultivating the way, I have never seen anyone comparable to her. Although it seems she has some karmic ties binding her, for junior disciple, this is not an issue. If we advance against the Chu clan in the future, she will undoubtedly be of great help." Zhang Yan also expressed enthusiasm, saying, "Only recently have I realized that a solitary path does not lead to success. Without a trustworthy peer, if one suffers serious injuries, those disciple clan members will always have their own family to worry about. As for those on the side of the diagram, the only ones to trust are the disciple and the master." He turned around and said to him, "Perhaps senior disciple has also heard the news. My emergence from the demonic abyss was due to Chi senior disciple. Shi Yun Tian personally came to my aid, and the profound meaning behind it is something that senior disciple can surely deduce." Chongju stroked his beard and said, after subduing San Bai, "I fear that within the sect, disciple recruitment will be carried out openly. Then, there will be the elder sister trials within the sect, along with preparations to counter the millennial demonic tribulation. The elixirs needed are not few. Currently, over 70% of them come from our alchemist peak. There are many things that sect leader needs my assistance with, and I will handle all of them well. Thus, you only need to focus on your cultivation." Zhang Yan furrowed his brow slightly and clasped his hands in response. No wonder Chi Yun Tian came personally to the demonic abyss. "Thank you, senior disciple, for your support." Chongju felt a bit embarrassed and said, "What is there to thank? If you weren't a true disciple and highly regarded by Master Sun, even if I were to cast aside my elderly face, someone like Chi Yun Tian, the head of the top 10 disciples, would probably not even spare you a glance." He returned to his meditation room. Behind the door, his voice resonated, "As a fellow cultivator, please write a letter to Apricot Immortal Peach on my behalf, informing them that I have accepted Lu Hao's granddaughter, Lu Yanyi, as an enrolled disciple. I hope the cultivators on the island will return Lu's senior disciple's material possessions. By the way, in the letter, you might inadvertently hint at my relationship with Chi Wen Tian and Fan Shangcheng. The island master of Apricot Immortal Peach is merely a disciple of Meng True Immortal. If they understand the intricacies of this relationship, they will naturally handle this matter appropriately." La Ping stood below, clasping her hands, and said, "Yes, my lord." She stepped out of the door. Zhang Yan murmured to himself, if he acted alone with supreme origin, gold fire, mysterious radiance, and various sacred artifacts on him, he would be adequately prepared to deal with any situation. However, if he were to accompany Fan's senior disciple and other fellow disciples, he needed to prepare even more, ensuring they would not easily discern the roots of his actions. He pulled a book from his sleeve. Aside from netherine heavy water, the most suitable thing for cultivation at the moment was the magical sigil. Taken from Shun Lafeng, he recalled that during their fight, those talismans had the ability to block sacred artifacts, which was truly impressive. He looked at the book and suddenly remembered that the Guan Yuan sect was once a major sect. Although it had now declined, this cultivation method still had its unique features. Zhang Yan set the book down, secretly contemplating that he might as well use these few days of leisure in Shattered Jade to practice, so that when the time comes, he would have an additional means to deal with his enemies. Currently, he had already become a mysterious radiance cultivator, and this item could also be utilized. He reached into the pocket of his robe and took out a yellow talisman. However, the usage of this talisman required careful study from within the magic pouch or charm case. He pulled the book out again and continued to read diligently. The Guan Yuan sect from 1,000 years ago was indeed worthy of being a prominent sect in cultivating the way, with its own unique resources. Zhang Yan began to enter a state of intense cultivation. According to the contents of the magic pouch or charm case, the methods for refining the magic scroll or charm record of the Guanyuan sect were divided into 5 categories: sub-school, fighting sect, life gate or emerging school, main sect or authentic school, and training school or practice sect. This book recorded the methods for refining and the legal principles regarding 2 types of talismans: branch sect talisman or sub-school charm and fighting sect talisman. The techniques surrounding the guiding principles gradually began to surface. The branch sect talisman, or sub-school charm, consists of 4 basic seals: hold, lock, protect, and release. The fighting sect talisman, or combat school charm, also has 4 seals: sword, weapon, shadow, and object. Various types of magic scrolls or charm records are meticulously categorized. This one book, the Way Book, alone has recorded over 100 types. The number of those not documented or that have been lost to time is even more uncertain. Each type of magic scroll or charm record contains a secret method and a specialized coordination of scripts. Only by becoming an official disciple of the Guanyuan sect and reaching the level of cultivation through Dan can one be taught a type of secret method to refine a true life talisman or guardian charm. At that point, there is no need to draw symbols or chant spells anymore. One simply needs to use the corresponding magical sigil in the true life talisman or guardian charm, complemented by the 5 elements divine sand, to activate the secret method for combat. The greater the power of the innate celestial talisman, the higher the ability to mobilize magic scrolls or charm records from a distance. At this level, sacred artifacts and magic scrolls are no longer distinguishable from one another. It is said that in the Guanyuan sect, there was once a high-ranking elder who refined true life talismans or guardian charms, which enabled ascension to the celestial realm. Zhang Yan lightly hissed and remarked, "Each type of magic scroll or charm record requires the support of 5 elements divine sand. The greater the power, the higher the quality of the required divine sand. Even so, it may require a significant amount of cloud sand. I'm afraid that even if one were to sell off an entire sect, it might not be enough to forge this heavenly talisman or celestial charm." He turned to the next page and discovered an important piece of information. Over the thousands of years, the teachings from the Guanyuan sect must contain a fraudulent cultivation method. It involves borrowing power from the primordial talisman or original charm to condense and forge the imprint of the talisman. He continued reading, and the next line explained, "During combat, one can directly infuse the essence of the 5 elements into the talisman. This method is more convenient than pre-drawing the symbols on the talisman by about 3 parts. However, the only drawback is the excessive waste of essence." Zhang Yan pondered, "This is truly the way to utilize the primordial talisman or original charm. As long as I practice diligently, and then purchase some talisman drawing paper and essence, I can employ this technique." He continued to read and felt that he had absorbed a wealth of knowledge from this book. This talisman text unexpectedly used edible script as its foundation for development. He exclaimed in surprise, "No wonder when I read the introduction of the talisman text, I felt so familiar. Edible script is my forte." This magic scroll or charm record seemed quite mystical at first glance, but after understanding the secret method, for someone well versed in edible script like him, it was merely a matter of dedicated practice. If one attempt fails, then practice twice. If 2 attempts fail, then practice 4 times. If 4 attempts are not enough, then just practice 100 times, 1,000 times. He held his magic scroll or charm record in his hands. This spell scroll was concise yet profound, rich in meaning. Shen Lefeng, a disciple of the Guanyuan sect, actually overlooked this superior cultivation method to focus on sword techniques. It truly is a waste of heavenly resources. In reality, just mastering the 2 cultivation methods of sword and weaponry and the fighting techniques would already yield power that was not inferior to swordsmanship. Zhang Yan began to enter his meditation state. Although there were only 8 or 9 days left until the time for the Sanbai expedition, if he focused on cultivating this cultivation method, within 6 or 7 days in the entire Jade, he would at least not be weaker than Shen Lefeng's initial level. 8 days later, at Wangfeng City, within the Bright Blade sect, Tin Sufai and everyone else were discussing among themselves. "What is Zhang Yan's background? Why is he making us wait so long?" Fan Changqing sat in meditation, not moving or speaking, only quietly listening to their conversation. Two men were talking to each other. One with a goatee spoke up, I heard he is a direct disciple who recently reached the Yingxia realm and is valued by Qi's senior disciple. The scar-faced man was surprised and asked with suspicion, direct disciple? Those idle youngsters probably have never faced a demon cultivator, have they? In our place, who hasn't followed Fan's senior disciple into life and death, going through bloody battles to rise up? What does this little brat rely on to come here? He scoffed and continued, the arrows of Xia's senior disciple and Nian's senior disciple have long since left. If we delay any longer, I'm afraid the credit will go to them. Fan Changqing quietly listened, showing no reaction to their conversation. Another person asked Ren's senior disciple, has Fan's senior disciple lost his mind? Why did he bring someone like this along this time? He retorted sharply, don't speak nonsense. Fan's senior disciple has his own reasons, just sit there quietly and don't meddle. Suddenly, Fan Changqing noticed a signal and announced to everyone Zheng junior disciple has arrived. Zhang Yan landed with a spectacular display of light. He stood there, respectful and courteous, clasping his hands, and introduced himself, I am Zhang Yan, paying respects to Fan's senior disciple and all senior brothers. Fan Changqing stood on the platform and said, come, junior disciple, sit beside me. Zhang Yan replied, yes. He then walked over, under the gaze of everyone. Zhang Yan wore a smug expression as he looked towards Ren Mingjiao, who was sitting. Fan Cheng continued, since everyone is here, let's set off. Along with that, a circle of fire was created in his hand. The voice of Fan Changqing echoed throughout the mountain, and after the situation was assessed, the barriers were activated. Even Essence Core cultivators could do nothing about it, and they could move freely within the killing formation. It could be said that this was a sharp tool in battle. This time, the Brightblade sect besieged Sanbai, deploying a total of 3 flying bows to the battlefield. Each bow was guarded by a core formation cultivator, connected remotely to one another. When one side was attacked, the other would speedily fly over to provide support. At the same time, the mountain containing the house with everyone inside gradually moved forward. Inside, he continued to relay military orders down from the sect. Xia's senior disciple will attack the Fool's Valley, so the senior disciple will strike the entrance of the Sea of Escape Rock, while we will attack the South Lamp River to create a pathway leading to the center of the Green Mysterious Lake or Azure Mystical Pond, removing obstacles for the sect. Shi junior disciple has taken out the items. Hearing this, the young man with the surname Tan embraced a pillar of resolution. He waved his hand, causing it to hover and be controlled by him. As the painting unfurled from the pillar, an image of a beach with a colossal mountain appeared. Fan Changqing explained, I invite all junior disciples to take a look, this is the geographical map of the Jade Blood Discourse that I figured out a way to retrieve. It outlines the islands and the distribution of the water retreat estate in South Lamp River. Although it's not very detailed, it's sufficient for our needs. He continued, among the 18 islands of South Lamp River, Return to Origin Island is the closest to us. The island lord's name is Quan Gong Wang, who is a refined black shrimp. This demon has been cultivating the way for no less than 3 years, achieving the 3 levels of mystical gateway cultivation, and was once a demon general for the dreamy Wax Mountain. Fan Changqing's expression darkened as the image of that red shrimp appeared in his mind. Suddenly, the sound of a bell echoed, and someone entered to report, reporting to Fan's senior disciple, there is a demon general ahead, with cultivation mysterious radiance blocking the path. He claims to be the guardian of Return to Origin Island and continuously curses at us, demanding that we retreat quickly. Otherwise, he will launch an attack on the hall. Upon hearing this, Fan Changqing waved his hand, sending a streak of golden light through the image on the scroll. The figure of an old man wielding a trident, adorned with a shrimp-shaped hat, appeared. Fan Changqing says, this must be the demon general Guan Gong Wang. Then, a ball named Qigong Bai appeared in the boy's hand, his gaze directed forward as he spoke, Ren junior disciple, this is the first battle, you should go yourself. Ran Mingjiao's expression was one of pride as he took the ball from Fan Changqing's hand. He bowed his head and swore, Ran Mingjiao will not disgrace the mission. A large bird suddenly appeared above, with Ran Mingjiao riding it. Then they immediately burst through the door and flew away. From the palace, he rode the bird down and said to the demon general Guangong, "A group of scaled animals has also learned to speak human language." The demon general Guangong was taken aback, exclaiming as he brandished the trident in his left hand. Ran Mingjiao sneered, conjuring a black rectangular shape in his hand. A golden circle appeared in the sky, incapacitating the demon general Guangong. "Over here." Fan Changqing saw this through the scroll and turned his gaze to Zhang Yan, saying, "Junior disciple, look, this is the 10,000 slaughter sword platform of Ren Junior disciple. In this sacred artifact, no less than 15 divine weapons have been refined, and it has produced over 1,000 types of named and renowned swords, draining all the gold essence into it. Once unleashed to attack the enemy, it will be like 1,000 swords pursuing and striking together, sharp and difficult to resist." He replied, "This object is called the 10,000 slaughter sword platform, but it only has 1,000 swords. It seems that this sacred artifact still holds other mysteries." Fan Changqing immediately agreed, the junior disciple is absolutely right. This item is the relic of an esteemed senior from the Yuan Yang sect back in the day. Originally, this sword contained countless divine weapons forged from metal, but with the passing of that elder, they have mostly disappeared. Ren Junior disciple claims to value the power of this treasure, which is why Master Meng True Immortal passed it down to him. At that moment, the demon general Quan Gong was still gripping his trident tightly in defense. Suddenly, one of his arms was severed while he continued to hold the trident with both hands. The demon general Quan Gong panicked and shouted, "Oh no! Oh no!" He turned to flee. But Ran Mingjiao was relentless. He swung his hand and said, "Want to run? It's too late." A golden sword shot forward, shattering the right side of the demon general Quan Gong. Numerous lights flashed, attacking him. The demon general Quan Gong swung the trident in defense. Nevertheless, Ren Mingjiao threw out 2 light blue objects, a satisfied smile on his lips. His trident was still pointed skyward. At that moment, many swords were attacking the demon general Quan Gong. A blue dimension was created, surrounded by red streaks. Ran Mingjiao laughed loudly, a surge of red power erupted. Then he appeared in the hall, still bearing the traces from the portal. He knelt down and said, "Fan senior disciple, fortunately, I did not disgrace the mission." Fan Changqing retracted the treasures and praised, "Ren Junior disciple, with just a flick of your wrist, has defeated the demon general and conveniently slain over 1,000 demon soldiers. Indeed, you have lived up to our expectations. The other junior disciples need not worry. There are a total of 8 demon islands in the south, and this is just one of them. We are entrusted by the Grand Master to punish Sanbai, and naturally, we must attack and eradicate all those places. The junior disciples need not worry about not achieving any merits." Everyone present fell into deep thought upon hearing this. Fan Changqing continued, "Although progress is generally smooth, I think we should pause and call for a truce today." Suddenly, the bell rang again. "Someone came to reporting to you, Fan senior disciple, a demon general has emerged from the lake ahead, declaring that it wants to fight us for a while." Fan Changchun unexpectedly asked, "A demon general, just one?" At this moment, a figure appeared on the scroll, completely clad in green, wielding an iron axe in hand. At this moment, the man with the surname Chang spoke up, "The Fan senior disciple should be next in line for the junior disciple to take the stage, right?" Fan Changqing hesitated slightly. "Cheng junior disciple, this monster seems too suspicious, perhaps you and Chang junior disciple should go together." The man with the surname Chang replied loudly, "If we go together, wouldn't that scare the monster away? Just one junior disciple like me is enough." He thought to himself, "Fan senior disciple is being unreasonable, killing a monster will earn a small merit, so it's better to go alone. Isn't that a blessing delivered right to my doorstep? If Cheng junior disciple accompanies me, who will ultimately receive the credit?" Fan Chang Chung waved his hand in acceptance, "Then you go ahead." He responded with pride, "I will not dishonor the command." From above, the man surnamed Chang leaped down towards the demon general. On the scroll, the scene of the two colliding vividly came into view. Suddenly, the demon general dashed past the man surnamed Chang, causing him to wince in pain as he fell to the ground. A disciple knelt down and reported, "I report to you, Fan senior disciple, that Chang senior disciple has been killed by that demon general." Upon hearing this, Fan Chang asked, "Who will go next?" Immediately, one of his senior disciples soared up, enveloping their body in a beam of green light, and shouted, "Junior disciple, I wish to go." Then, Fan Changqing turned to look at Zhang Yan with a worried and uneasy expression. Suddenly, a disciple rushed forward. He knelt down in salute, his voice filled with panic. "Respected senior disciple, when we went down, senior disciple Chang had the upper hand, but for some reason, despite using mysterious radiance, he was unable to harm the demon general. On the contrary, he was killed by a single axe strike." Upon hearing this, both Fan Changchang and Ren Mingjiao were astonished, their expressions changing and startled. Then, Ren Mingjiao turned to look at Zhang Yan and spoke, "Senior disciple, he." Zhang Yan, upon hearing this, was also taken aback, his expression shifting slightly. He knew that the situation had become much more serious. Ming Zhao extended his hand and expressed his opinion. "Senior disciple Fan, previously I achieved a merit in battle. Continuing to seize the merits of the junior disciples is not quite appropriate. Junior disciple Zhang Yan has never participated in battle, so perhaps this time we should let him take action to eliminate this demon. We can also closely observe the skills of the true disciple," he added. Zhang Yan frowned and looked at him with sharp eyes. Meanwhile, Chang Qing appeared worried, pondering something. He recalled that his senior disciple had once mentioned that junior disciple Fan and junior disciple Zhang had a significant relationship. "If you do not protect him carefully, I will hold you accountable." He bowed his head and reverently replied, "Yes, senior disciple." A few seconds later, Chang Qing voiced his objection, "This is not right, this demon general is concealing deadly moves. No matter who it is, I fear that one person alone cannot contend with him. In my opinion, we should all come together to kill him, otherwise, this place is vast and full of islands scattered everywhere. The cultivation of this demon general is not lower than ours. If we send out a large force, he will surely flee. By then, how can we catch up? It would seem that Cheng junior disciple and Cheng junior disciple would have to die unjustly. Ran Mingjiao boasts that he possesses exceptional qualities and is regarded as one of the favored disciples under Meng True Immortal. However, everyone knows that only when he is valued by the esteemed senior disciple, who is a third-generation disciple and has a strong potential to assume the position of sect leader, Shi Yun Tian, will he have a seat within the sect. Some people rest their hands on their chins in contemplation, while others turn to say, "Senior disciple NM makes a valid point." However, in recent years, Shi Yun Tian has not called for any members, and Ran Mingjiao was not in any rush either. Both Qi and Ren were students of the same master, and each believed they had the best chance of being favored by him. However, the appearance of Zhang Yan caused a surge of vigilance within him, especially since Qi Yun Tian had just exited seclusion to welcome Zhang Yan out of the demonic abyss. This action was thought-provoking. Ming Jiao frowned and pondered, this individual could not be kept around. At the moment, there was a very good opportunity. It would be best if this Zhang Yan were to be eliminated by that demonic general. If that did not happen, it could also serve as a chance to observe his strength, and he could find another way in the future. At the same time, Chang Chang lowered his head and pondered. If he openly favored Zhang junior disciple in front of everyone, it would be hard to avoid being unreasonable, but since Qi's senior disciple had entrusted him, he couldn't disregard it. It seemed that he had no choice but to abandon his dignity and protect him no matter what. Suddenly, Zhang Yan stepped forward decisively. Right after that, he performed a salute and spoke up, "A senior disciple, how about I, as the junior disciple, go down to fight this demon once?" Chang Qing thought to himself, well, Ming Jiao is praising him, how commendable, voluntarily asking to kill the enemy, truly just a clumsy fool running with a jar. Ming Jiao continued, his tone full of admiration, "Senior disciple, if Zhang junior disciple has already said that, you can't be too unreasonable, can you?" Chang Qing rested his chin on his hand and replied, "Then you should go ahead." After receiving Chang Qing's consent, Zhang Yan turned around and walked away. Meanwhile, Ming Jiao raised a hand to say goodbye and cheerfully said, "Junior disciple Zhang is going into battle, he will surely achieve great success. We will be here waiting for good news from junior disciple. The sky at this moment was a deep blue, and the flowing waters along the embankment were truly beautiful. Zhang Yan closed his eyes, resting his chin on his hand, deep in thought for a long while. Seeing this, the others began to discuss, could it be that Zhang Yan is scared? Lacking real talent, he still dares to go to Sanbai to slay demons? What kind of true disciple is this? Even if he loses his life, it would just be a joke. As soon as Zhang Yan stepped outside, a voice rang out, "O Zhang junior disciple, why are you so slow and sluggish? Are you waiting for that demon general to escape on his own?" Zhang Yan ignored the words and thought to himself, that's right, this is the moment. Then, from the city tower, a brilliant beam of golden light appeared, shining straight down. The beam rushed directly towards the demon general, causing him to be taken aback. The demon general gripped the staff in his hand tightly and raised it high to block. The name of the demon general seemed unable to withstand any longer and leaned back. The beam of yellow light grew increasingly blinding, accompanied by a flashing blue light. At that moment, the surface of the water was covered by the blue light, while the yellow beam illuminated the city. Zhang Yan slowly stepped in with great poise. The head of the demon general was decisively thrown onto the ground. Zhang Yan spoke up, "Can the head of the demon general here be offered in tribute to the souls of the two senior brothers in heaven?" Seeing this, Fan Changcheng shouted with a beaming expression, "Good." Everyone around couldn't help but be astonished and whispered among themselves. A powerful demon like that was beheaded in an instant. Could it be that the true disciple really possesses such formidable strength and exceptional skills? Then, Ren Mingjiao stepped forward and said, "Zhang junior disciple eliminated this demon in the blink of an eye, it's truly remarkable. However, as a senior disciple, I would like to inquire about one thing, what cultivation method did Zhang junior disciple use to kill this demon?" Upon hearing this, Zhang Yan raised his hand to create a beam of golden light and asked, "Does Ren senior disciple want to know?" The next moment, he launched the golden light straight towards the green dagger, leaving him so astonished that his mouth fell open.